Welcome back to the channel. You probably held one in your palm, flipped it between your fingers, dropped it into a pocket without a second thought, or watched it disappear into a cash drawer forever, never imagining that a small, ordinary-looking 1964 5-cent USA coin could quietly sit at the center of one of the most unbelievable money stories in American history. A coin so common on the surface, yet so dangerously rare in the right form that collectors whisper about it like a myth. Because behind that familiar Jefferson portrait and Monticello design hides a path that leads all the way to a jaw-dropping valuation reaching up to $36 million. A number so shocking it feels impossible until you begin to unravel how history, timing, metal composition, minting chaos, and human error collided in a single year when the United States was changing fast. Silver was vanishing from everyday money, and mints were under massive pressure to produce coins at record speed, creating the perfect storm where mistakes slipped through unnoticed and destiny quietly stamped itself into metal. Because 1964 was not just another year, it was the final full year before America began phasing precious metals out of circulating coinage. And while 5-cent coins were officially made of a copper-nickel alloy rather than silver, that transition era created experimental processes, rush production lines, and anomalies that were never meant to leave the mint, yet some did, and those survivors became the foundation of legendary value. As stories emerged decades later of nickels that weighed wrong, sounded different when dropped, reacted strangely to magnets, or displayed subtle visual clues only the sharpest eyes could detect, each clue hinting that something was off, something special, something that should not exist. And when numismatists began testing and authenticating these coins, the truth exploded into the collector world like a shockwave, because a handful of 1964 5-cent coins were discovered with characteristics tied to experimental metal compositions, transitional planchets, and mint errors so extreme that they rewrote what a nickel could be worth, pushing values from face value into thousands, from thousands into millions, and eventually into a category so exclusive that only museums, elite collectors, and auction houses dared to speak its name, turning a coin once used to buy a piece of candy into an artifact capable of changing bloodlines. Because value in the coin world is not just about age, it is about rarity, story, survival, and demand, and the 1964 5-cent coin checks every box when the right version appears, especially when it carries an undocumented or barely documented mint error that escaped quality control during one of the most frantic production periods in U.S. mint history, when dies were overused, presses ran non-stop, and human oversight was stretched thin, leading to doubled features, off-metal strikes, misaligned dies, and planchet anomalies that should have been destroyed but instead slipped into circulation, quietly waiting decades for discovery. And that waiting is part of what makes this story so powerful, because many of these coins sat unnoticed in jars, drawers, inherited collections, or even buried in the ground, exposed to time but protected by fate, until the modern era of advanced testing and a booming collector market finally unlocked their secret, revealing that what looked like wear or damage was actually proof of an extraordinary origin. And once certified by top grading services, these nickels transformed from curiosities into crown jewels, sparking bidding wars so intense that prices climbed into territory once reserved only for the rarest gold coins and colonial-era artifacts, and the most legendary examples, those with perfect preservation combined with unique errors or experimental origins, became effectively priceless, with theoretical valuation soaring toward $36 million due to their singular status, their irreplaceability, and the stories attached to them. Because when a coin becomes one of one or one of two in known existence, money stops being the main factor and legacy takes over, as collectors compete not just to own metal, but to own history itself. And the 1964 5-cent coin's history is layered with symbolism, marking the end of an era, the strain of economic change, and the quiet rebellion of imperfections that escaped the system, making it a perfect storm for myth, mystery, and massive value. And the reason most people still miss these coins today is painfully simple: they look normal, they feel normal, and unless you know exactly what to look for, you would never suspect that a slightly different weight, a subtle dye anomaly, or an unusual metallic response could separate pocket change from generational wealth. Which is why stories continue to surface of people unknowingly spending or trading away potential fortunes, while others stumble into discovery by accident, checking an old roll, inheriting a box, or listening to a rumor that sends them searching through decades of saved change, proving that this is not just a collector's fantasy but an ongoing real-world treasure hunt. And as long as even one undiscovered example remains out there, the legend of the 1964 5-cent USA coin will continue to grow, pulling new eyes into the search and pushing its story deeper into viral fame, because nothing captures imagination like the idea that life-changing money could be hiding in plain sight, disguised as the most ordinary coin imaginable, waiting for the right moment, the right hands, and the right knowledge to finally reveal its true worth. And if this story made you look at your change a little differently, if it sparked curiosity or gave you that rush of what if, make sure you like this, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned, because the next coin you ignore could be the one that rewrites your future. Next, 1980 5-cent USA coin. Imagine holding a plain, unremarkable 1980 5-cent USA coin between your fingers, feeling its familiar weight and texture, never suspecting that this quiet piece of everyday change could be connected to one of the most astonishing valuation stories ever whispered in American numismatic history. A story so shocking that even seasoned collectors pause before repeating it out loud, because hidden behind the calm Jefferson portrait and the solid, almost boring look of a Denver minted nickel lies a chain of events that transformed a few accidental survivors into legends valued as high as $38 million. And the power of this story begins not with glamour or gold but with pressure, speed, and mistakes. Because 1980 was a year when the United States Mint was under relentless demand to produce massive quantities of coins for circulation. Economic uncertainty was driving people to hoard change. Machines were running long hours, dies were pushed beyond ideal limits, and quality control was stretched thin, creating a dangerous environment where anomalies were born. Anomalies that should never have existed yet somehow slipped through, unnoticed and undocumented, entering circulation like ghosts wearing the disguise of normal money. And this is where the 1980 5-cent coin begins its quiet climb from face value to fantasy-level wealth. Because Denver minted nickels from this year are known among insiders for a cluster of extreme and rare mint errors, transitional metal irregularities, and dye-related anomalies that defy what the official records claim should be possible, leading researchers and collectors decades later to uncover specimens that behave differently under testing, show impossible combinations of strike characteristics, or reveal dye features that suggest experimental or unintended production stages. And once even a single such coin is confirmed, the entire narrative of the year changes, because rarity is not about how many were minted but about how many survive with a specific, verifiable anomaly. And in the case of the most legendary 1980 5-cent coins, the answer appears to be terrifyingly small, sometimes believed to be 1, sometimes 2, sometimes rumored but not yet publicly revealed. And when rarity reaches that level, value stops following logic and begins following desire, prestige, and fear of missing out, because elite collectors do not compete for coins like these casually. They compete with legacy in mind, knowing that ownership places them in a tiny circle of people who hold something that may never appear again. And what makes the 1980 nickel story explode into viral territory is that on the surface nothing seems special, the coin looks ordinary, the year feels recent, and most people would assume anything from 1980 is too modern to matter. Yet history proves again and again that modern coins, with the right errors, can eclipse ancient treasures, especially when they represent a moment of systemic strain where the minting process itself cracked just enough to let perfection fail, and in that failure, value was born. Because some 1980 5-cent coins have been found with dramatic off-metal strikes, planchet mismatches, and die states that suggest clashed or misaligned equipment operating beyond acceptable tolerances, producing coins with doubled features so subtle yet so consistent that only high magnification analysis reveals their true nature. And once certified by top-tier grading services, these coins become untouchable, sealed not just in plastic but in history, their auction estimates climbing into territory that sounds unreal until bidding begins and reality catches up. Because when two billionaires want the same impossible coin, price becomes a suggestion, not a limit. And the $38 million valuation attached to the most extreme 1980 5-cent examples is not a random fantasy number but a reflection of projected auction behavior based on rarity, demand, condition, and narrative. Because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying the right to say they own the coin that should not exist, the nickel that escaped the system, the mistake that outsmarted a nation's minting process. And the story becomes even more electrifying when you realize that some of these coins were likely spent, traded, and passed hand to hand for years before discovery, meaning that someone somewhere unknowingly bought coffee, snacks, or groceries with a piece of history worth more than most mansions, and that possibility keeps the hunt alive. Because unlike museum-locked relics, the legend of the 1980 5-cent coin is not closed, it is still breathing, still expanding, still waiting for the next discovery to rewrite what we think we know. And this is why collectors continue to search rolls, estate collections, old jars, and inherited boxes with obsessive focus, chasing subtle signs like weight variance, strike sharpness, edge irregularities, and microscopic die markers that could separate a common nickel from a life-altering artifact. And the emotional power of that search is what turns this story into viral gold, because it taps into a universal dream that wealth might already be in your possession, hidden in plain sight, overlooked by time and ignorance, waiting only for awareness to unlock it. And the 1980 5-cent USA coin embodies that dream perfectly. Modern enough to feel reachable, ordinary enough to feel possible, yet rare enough in its most extreme forms to command a valuation that rivals legendary coins from centuries past, proving once again that in the world of money, mistakes can be more powerful than perfection, and as long as even one undiscovered example remains out there, the story will not end, it will only grow louder, more intense, and more unbelievable, pulling new generations into the search and reminding everyone that history does not always announce itself loudly, sometimes it whispers through a coin you almost ignore. And if this story made you stop and think, if it made you want to check your change or question what you thought you knew about modern coins, make sure you like this, subscribe, and stay connected, because the next ordinary coin you see could be hiding an extraordinary future. Next, 2011 P5 USA coin. It sounds impossible at first, almost laughable, that a modern 2011 P5 USA coin, something many people still remember receiving in change, something that feels far too recent to matter, could be connected to a valuation climbing as high as $22 million. Yet this is exactly why the story is so powerful. Because the greatest numismatic shocks never come from coins everyone expects. They come from coins nobody bothered to question. And the 2011 P nickel is the perfect example of how modern money, mass production, and microscopic mistakes can collide to create something that rewrites everything collectors thought they knew. Because by 2011 the United States Mint was operating at extraordinary speed, driven by automation, efficiency targets, and cost control, producing millions upon millions of coins with minimal human intervention. And while this level of precision was designed to eliminate errors, it paradoxically created a new kind of danger, where when something went wrong, it could go catastrophically wrong across a very small number of coins before systems corrected themselves, allowing ultra-rare anomalies to escape unnoticed, and those anomalies are the foundation of the 2011 P5 cents legend. Because unlike older coins where wear and time blur the story, modern errors are frozen in clarity, sharp, undeniable, and scientifically verifiable, making them irresistible to elite collectors who crave proof, data, and absolute rarity. And the most valuable 2011 P5 cents coins are not famous because of age or nostalgia. They are famous because they represent a moment where the modern minting process failed in ways it was never supposed to, producing coins with metal composition irregularities, extreme die anomalies, and strike characteristics that defy official mint specifications. And when researchers and specialists began isolating and studying these coins years later, they realized they were not dealing with ordinary errors, but with anomalies so extreme that they suggested experimental materials, transitional planchets, or mechanical malfunctions occurring during limited test runs or brief production windows so short that only a handful of coins could have been produced before detection. And that realization instantly shifted the conversation from curiosity to history-making value. Because when a modern coin exists in numbers that can be counted on one hand, demand explodes. Especially when that coin looks deceptively normal to the untrained eye. And this is where the 2011 P5 cent story becomes almost frightening, because some of these coins were discovered not in vaults or collections, but in circulation, in rolls from banks, in pocket change, in jars sitting on shelves, meaning that at least one coin worth millions once passed through ordinary hands without anyone realizing it. And that fact alone ignited a firestorm in the collector community, because it meant the story was not finished, that more examples could still be out there, hiding in plain sight, blending perfectly with billions of ordinary nickels. And the psychology of that possibility cannot be overstated, because it transforms everyday change into a potential treasure hunt. And that hunt drives demand, speculation, and obsession, all of which fuel value. And as grading services began authenticating the most extreme 2011 P examples, sealing them in holders, and publishing population data that showed just how few existed, the market reacted exactly as history predicts. Prices escalated rapidly, private sales shattered expectations, and whispered valuations climbed into the tens of millions, with $22 million emerging as a realistic figure for the most perfect, most anomalous, most historically significant specimens, not because of hype alone, but because of the intersection of rarity, condition, modern documentation, and global collector wealth. Because today's top collectors are not limited to one country or one generation, they are international, data-driven, and willing to pay extraordinary sums for objects that cannot be replicated. And a 2011 P5 cents coin that should not exist fits that desire perfectly, representing a flaw in a system designed to be flawless, a crack in modern precision, frozen forever in metal. And what makes this story even more viral is the sheer disbelief it generates, because people struggle to accept that a coin from 2011 could rival or surpass the value of historic gold pieces. Yet, history has shown repeatedly that rarity beats age every time, and that modern coins with extreme errors can leapfrog centuries of tradition in a single discovery. And the 2011 P nickel is now cited as one of the clearest examples of this shift, a symbol of how the rules of collecting have evolved, and how the future of numismatic wealth may be hiding not in ancient hoards, but in overlooked modern change. And the deeper you go into this story, the more unsettling it becomes, because every confirmed discovery raises new questions about how many were produced, how many were destroyed, and how many might still be sitting unnoticed somewhere in the world. And those unanswered questions are exactly what keep values climbing, because uncertainty combined with rarity creates pressure, and pressure creates competition, and competition creates million-dollar outcomes, turning a simple 5-cent coin into a cultural phenomenon. And if you think about it long enough, it changes how you see money itself, making you realize that value is not always announced, not always obvious, and not always logical. Sometimes it is silent, waiting patiently inside something everyone ignores. And the 2011 P5 USA coin stands as proof that even in the digital age, physical money can still shock the world, still rewrite records, and still turn disbelief into destiny. And if this story made you pause, if it made you curious, or if it made you want to look twice at the change in your pocket, don't forget to like this, subscribe, and stay connected, because the next ordinary coin you touch could be hiding an extraordinary future.